Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scuzz, Flying V Scousebow.
We'll get there in just a bit, but
well, only two of these teams tonight have the propensity to figure out a flying V.
That's
the third
true.
one, oof. It's like it's like that third dragon head in the memes we got.
Yeah.
Guys, we're less than a month away from kicking this thing off.
It's amazing. We're getting there.
That's
Getting
so
down
cool.
to it in less than 2 months away from the fancy new barn.
Oh yeah. But I just, kind of putting that it's getting close. And watching like NFL training camp stuff, it's like, ooh, it's coming. The Hall of Fame game, which more people watch the Hall of Fame game, a BS game with backups of the backups, than watched any hockey game this year, period.
That's
Is that real?
7 million people watched the Hall of Fame game. The highest rated hockey game, I think the Cup Finals went like 4.5.
Man, people are missing out. Hockey's great. The Hall of Fame game sucks.
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I had no interest in watching that whatsoever. I'm basically to the point now, for being honest. Part of this is that I work on Sundays, but I'm basically to the point where my interest in the NFL is what Northwestern guys are playing where. And
well, speaking of Northwestern guys playing,
yeah, getting them checks.
Peter Skoronski got paid.
Yeah.
4-year extension was $100 million.
Yeah.
Good for him. That's awesome.
And I think they had done, we kind of knew this was coming because they had signed him to some ridiculously high placeholder that basically indicated that it was like, this is such a ludicrous amount of money in a short window that it's obvious they're hammering out a long-term deal, and that's going to be a ton of money, and that's exactly what they did. But yeah, it's fantastic. Rashawn Slater, Pete Skoronski, guys making big money. And you know what? Throw Veronica Burton in there too.
Oh, hell yeah.
Who, if we're talking about year-over-year earnings, has seen more of an increase in her earning power than just about anybody.
God, she just continues to light it up. Man.
And for a team that's one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the WNBA and is going to go deep into the playoffs, like it's awesome.
Ball holla, baby.
Absolutely. Yep. So tonight we are here to talk about the middle part of our conference slate. Games in October against Rutgers, Oregon, and flip to November when we play Iowa. Getting into it.
All this whole time we've been talking about all these teams, and up until this point, we've only covered one game in the new Ryan Field. But tonight we're covering 2, which is pretty cool. One of them is going to be, I think, a lot more hot of a ticket than the other one is. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the huge Rutgers fan base is absolutely going to be flocking in.
That's right.
And with those throngs of Rutgers fans coming to Evanston to sit in the new Palace, what could they expect to see, and what can we expect to see from the Rutgers D?
Well, I think when all those fans arrive, there's going to be an open tryout, and they'll take the best 11 that they can come up with. I kid, but
This ain't no 12-man situation.
Yeah. But do I kid? It's funny. Like we talked about. It's like we talked about UCLA and how horrific their defense was, and then we talked about Colorado, and it was like Colorado's defense was even worse than UCLA's. But Colorado's not a Big Ten defense. And in the Big Ten, in a world where that UCLA defense exists, it really shouldn't have been possible for there to be a worse Big Ten defense. And yet, the 2025 Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So we've talked about this for a couple of years, and we love to track themes and like the progression of coordinators and people who come through. Obviously, like we talked about Brian Haynes being like a classic example of this, but if you've been following the pod for a couple of years now, like this won't be new information for you, but Rutgers is a key part of the Corey Heatherman story, right? His meteoric rise. This guy was defensive coordinator in the national championship game this past year, right? For the Miami Hurricanes. And before that, his amazing year at Minnesota. But before that, he was Rutgers linebackers coach. And Rutgers' defensive resume right now is basically, once upon a time, they had Corey Heatherman coaching the linebackers, and those linebackers were really good. And the operative phrase there is once upon a time, because that time is now firmly in the rearview mirror. And holy shit, is this a bad defense now?
Wow.
Last year, this unit surrendered 433 yards and 32 points a game. Absolutely garbage combination of stats. That was good for worst in the conference and third worst in the conference. And this pathetic performance was underpinned by an absolutely horrific run defense that splits the difference between that UCLA and that Colorado defense. They gave up a nightmarish 210 yards per game. So again, UCLA's 2025 defense is the worst run defense I've ever watched on tape the week before we played a team. That UCLA defense finished second to last in the conference in run defense, and that defense was 20 yards a game better than this defense was. The Scarlet Knights are just all the way down the well right now. There are few things I'm more confident of than Rutgers is going to continue to absolutely suck on defense in 2026. Last year, this team basically threw a bunch of extremely mediocre portal pieces together. Were awful. And they're just going to throw together a new set of mediocre portal pieces together this year with a new defensive coordinator. I seriously don't have much to say about the guys coming in. The defensive line is horrible. It can't stop the run. It can't get to the quarterback. Rutgers is going to start multiple defensive backs who were playing FCS football last year, as well as a guy from Maryland, a defense that also sucked last year. They maybe have one okay linebacker. The new defensive coordinator is Travis Johansson, formerly South Dakota, not South Dakota State's defensive coordinator and head coach. The Dakotas, obviously, we've talked about this before. I feel like this has been a theme. The Dakotas are obviously a college football defensive progression hotbed all of a sudden. David Braun obviously had a ton to do with that happening. But if you look, Johansson hasn't actually coached a good defense in several years, and that was at the FCS level. There's no evidence whatsoever that he has the giant fire extinguisher that you would need to put this dumpster fire out. All I have left to say, this is just a fantastic defense to get to play. It's not good at anything. It might be the worst defense in the conference again. When I've been putting these defensive previews together this summer, this was one of the first ones I put together largely after we got the Jackson Carcello news. So, I'm just picturing him and Big Mo just lining up together and caving this defense in for our deep stable of running backs in our pretty new stadium, which hopefully, like we said, Rutgers ain't going to travel, but hopefully our fans, this is still going to be, the third game there?
Yeah.
And hopefully this will, with this being the second Big Ten game ever in this barn, people will really show out for it, because with just a little bit of momentum and a little bit of fan support, I just think we can cave this defense in. It's simply put, it's the worst defense in the Big Ten.
Offense any better, Scuzz?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
And it's been good for a couple years, and it's because of Kirk Ciarrocca, who might be the Big Ten offensive coordinator that we've talked the most about over the past decade, outside of our own.
Yeah.
He's bounced his way through 3 different Big Ten teams with multiple stints on 2 of them in the last 20 years. I think it'd be easy to look at that track record and kind of, forget that Kirk Ciarrocca is a really good OC, but with the exception of the one failed year at Penn State, his offenses have all hit above their weight everywhere he's been. Now, at Rutgers specifically, since 2023, when he came back here, he has raised the offensive profile of a school that was never great offensively. And he has partnered with a defensive-minded head coach in Greg Schiano.
Tell me more about this defensive mind.
Who also, he's a defensive guy, right? That's his,
sure.
That's his thing.
Yeah.
He's never had great offenses, is my point. And Ciarrocca
right.
has rocked up and done a great job. Rutgers was scoring in the teens on average per game before Kirk's return. And in the last 2 seasons, we're almost at 29 points per game. That's a pretty massive improvement. Now, his biggest challenge this year is going to be replacing Ethan Kaliakmanis, who followed him from Minnesota. Kaliakmanis improved markedly on his 2024 performance with much better passing efficiency this past season, 500 additional yards on 25 fewer attempts. He was very much the perfect quarterback to help Kirk establish his RPO-heavy scheme, especially given they had worked together in Minnesota previously. The biggest beneficiary of that at Rutgers in 2025 becomes the focal point for this offense in 2026, and that's Antoine Raymond, who ran for 1,200 yards and 13 TDs. Almost identical production to current Chicago Bear Kyle Monagai from the year prior. Anytime you can lose a guy like Monagai and not miss a beat is pretty impressive. And it was against a much tougher schedule in 2025 too. That said, overall running production went down slightly, likely due to the quality defenses they were playing, and then the backups. There wasn't much behind Raymond. This year, they're going to wash, rinse, repeat that part of their offense. This is going to be a run-focused team, and then they're going to look to build on that stable platform with the classic RPOs that Kirk's likes to run. So I'm going to clap for Greg Schiano at this point, which might be funny because I talked about him as a defensive guy earlier, but he has done a better job overseeing the building of an offensive line pipeline and a development path at Rutgers than I feel like half the conference. He's done a hell of a lot better than Luke Fickell has done at Wisconsin. Let's start there. Now, these aren't the top, they don't have top of the line guys across the board, but I only see 2 transfers in their entire 3 deep from this like coming into this next year. All the starters are upperclassmen. They did bring in 3 transfers last year, and they redshirted them so they could get used to the system. They now have a bevy of options to go along with their 2 returning starters, who are both NFL prospects, by the way. This is not USC's line or Oregon's line. They don't have that kind of ceiling, but it's a really great foundation with a ton of depth and in-program experience. It's like an old-school, homegrown offensive line circa 2016.
Wait, you can do that?
Yes, you
That's
can do
allowed?
that. And it is. And I think it's got to matter for something, especially in a scheme that famously or infamously Penn State players really struggled to pick up quickly in 2021 when Shiraka went to State College, and they were bad. So as a result of this awesome foundation that they've built on O-line, Raymond should easily exceed his production from last year. And then the running back room is deep. They've got last year's backup, plus they bring in a part-time starter from Louisiana Tech. They've got a few other guys there. There's good depth at running back. The question will be if a solid, albeit young receiving core and a new quarterback can hold up their side of the RPO scheme. Dylan Lonergan comes over from Boston College, where he started most of last season, notably after going to Alabama as a top 10 quarterback recruit out of high school. Lonergan absolutely thrashed Michigan State in East Lansing last season for 390 yards and 4 touchdowns. It was a double OT, granted. He went over 300 against both Stanford and Georgia Tech. In total, 67% complete, 2,000 yards, 12 TDs, and 5 picks. That looks pretty damn good for a first-year starter on a team, Boston College, that was generally not great and didn't have much around him.
Can I just insert here, because we did the Michigan State preview last week, that remember those numbers and remember that Michigan State basically has added no one other than Kenny Soares to help fill that problem when you're wondering how Michigan State's defense is going to be this year. It's like they get 390 yards and they didn't really bring in many fixes. Just folding that in.
Hooah. So if Lonergan can grasp Shiraka's system quickly, this should be a plug-and-play starter who's got a much higher ceiling athletically than Kaliakmanis. This could work really, really well in terms of the 2 sides of this offense that Shiraka likes to run. The top receiver from last year, KJ Duff, is back. He's yet another 1,000-yard receiver in the Shiraka system. Averaged 18 yards per catch with 7 touchdowns. This is a big game hunter. He's 6'6". He's 225 pounds. He's a vertical monster. I'll also note that the Gophers have been totally lacking in this department since Shiraka left 3 years ago. Rutgers do have to replace the rest of last year's wide receiver production. They have a variety of young players to evaluate. Redshirt freshman Jordan Houston would be my on paper pick, but there's a true freshman, Desir Carter, who is their top recruit this year, who's probably going to get an opportunity as well. They have a number of other guys, again, many of them homegrown, kind of to fill in the middle of the field, right? If you've got Duff going over the top, going deep, stretching defenses vertically, they've got Raymond actually absolutely softening up the underbelly and drawing the front seven, drawing the safeties down. They've got a bevy of guys that they can play with in the middle of the field and figure out what chemistry is going to work best with the new QB, et cetera. They're in a really great situation. The biggest issue for this team is sacks. Rutgers gave up a ton of sacks last year, 38. Lonergan got sacked 35 times at Boston College. He's not a very mobile QB. Kaliakmanis was not a mobile QB. So this is probably the weakness of their offense. If you can hold their running game in check enough to get some really good pass rush opportunities, you can really disrupt what they want to do. Now, they can improve their protection with their offensive line. I think this offense can well exceed what it did the last 2 years and easily top 30 points per game. Pair that with, a pretty empty cupboard on defense, and you're looking at a pretty fun Rutgers team, to at least from an entertainment standpoint.
So I'm looking at this schedule, and I'm noticing something, and I'll run through it and see if you guys pick up on this as well. So they open up the season at home against UMass. They travel to Boston College, so Lonergan gets to go home in week 2. They're home for Southern Cal and Howard and Indiana, three-game homestand. Then they get their bye week. They're at Maryland. They're at Northwestern, home for Michigan, at Wisconsin, home for Nebraska, at Penn State, and home for Michigan State to wrap things up. They don't go any further.
They leave the East Coast twice.
They do not cross the Mississippi.
Yep.
Dang.
They don't cross the Mississippi, and they go Illinois and Wisconsin. And we're the first time that they won't be looking at water or be they're close.
To be fair, last year they had to go to Washington, but then their next longest trip was Minnesota, and everything else was east.
Yeah, it's funny, like you were talking about Kaliakmanis. Who's the quarterback that I can never remember who played 6 million years at Minnesota?
Tanner Morgan?
Tanner Morgan.
Was it Morgan? It was so long that Shiraka left and then came back. Tanner
Morgan.
Yeah.
I think there's a lawsuit pending that could give him another year or two.
Oh Lord!
I was going to say between him and Kaliakmanis, those are two guys who I feel like played 20 combined years of college football, and Shiraka had his hand in almost all of it. But yeah, he is really good. Like Scott said, relative to this schedule, I'm looking at the week before this Maryland game, which is going to be an absolute laser show. That is defense optional football and two teams that are going to pile up points. I think we'll learn a lot. We haven't talked a tremendous amount about the Northwestern pieces of a lot of the teams that we've played, right? Like we've spoken in like bits and pieces or some thoughts. And obviously we dig into a lot of that more in the game week stuff. The one thing I will say about this game, and again, this is not to go doom and gloom. Without stepping on all our Northwestern preview stuff, like we think we have a very good football team with lots of great players. If in some doomsday scenario, things really go south this year, this feels like the game where the mask will be all the way off and you'll know. And you'll know because Rutgers wins because Rutgers controlled the ball at the line of scrimmage when they had the football. And that's not to say that's going to happen, and I really hope that it doesn't happen. But we have a team with not much recent track record and a horrific defense coming into town. But they may have an advantage. Their offensive line may just be better than our defensive line. And they have great running backs. And the question is how much they're going to leverage that. Scuzz talked about their quarterback may put it together. Their wide receivers may put it together. But we may have an awesome secondary. Like we may be able to match up against that better. And that's not to say that we're going to have good linebackers and hopefully the defensive line comes together. But Rutgers is a team that the one thing they know is that they have this great offensive line that they've got going here. And against us, that's going to be their plan. They're just going to try to lean on it and run the football. And we're going to know. I mean, by that point, we're going to kind of know, but we're really going to find out. Hopefully, the defensive line stuff is going to be put together and we can put this one to bed. Because, I mean, I think our offense should shred them. Just shred them. And we should be able to do whatever we want to do, however we want to do it. But if they're able to control the line of scrimmage and do what they want and they can win a close game, like that's how they're going to do it. I think, Sam, you were looking up like matchup predictor or something, and or was that Colorado?
That was Colorado.
I was going to say, yeah. I was curious to see like what our early line
well,
is
I mean,
for this one.
like, ESPN's early matchup predictor, I mean, take it for what it will. According to ESPN Athletics, we've got a 62.5% chance of winning that game here in the beginning of August. So that number's obviously going to change, but
AI slop, who's to say?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I believe we're light years more complete football team than this team. I mean, they're only playing football on one side of the ball, but that side of the ball is legit. And again, like they played Maryland the week before, and that's two teams that in my book are very similar, and we don't have to play one of them, and we do have to play the other one.
So we wrap up. Well, actually, before we wrap up with Rutgers, what are you expecting? Like, what's their number? Could they go bowling with this schedule?
Let's see. I'm scanning through really quickly, and
they could.
I mean, everything would have to go right, but they don't really have a murderer's row.
They get Michigan State at home. They get Nebraska at home.
They could do it. I mean, UMass, Boston College, Howard. That's 3 wins.
Michigan State.
At Maryland, at Northwestern, Michigan State, Nebraska, at Wisconsin. I mean, there's enough mulligans there. I think they could pull it together.
Yeah, they could. I mean, it really could go either way. I mean, credit to Rutgers offense that it kind of hinges on just how much they can do on that side of the ball. And I think, Maryland, everyone this schedule doesn't look a heck of a lot harder than Maryland's schedule, and everyone's making so much about how Maryland's schedule is so much dramatically easier this year. It'll be really interesting to see those two teams. Obviously, I think that Boston College game is a huge pivot point for Rutgers. That Maryland game is a huge pivot point for Rutgers. But
I think, I mean, it's all about, with Rutgers, it's all about, yes, it's controlling the line of the scrimmage, but really it's about, can you make them one-dimensional? If we don't have to stop their run to make them one-dimensional. Don't give up 6.8 yards per carry, which, by the way, is what Rutgers gave up on average last year. Don't do that and put up a bunch of points on the other side. You will make Rutgers one-dimensional. And, I mean, a Wisconsin, a Michigan State, even a Nebraska, they might not be able to do that.
It'll be interesting, like Wisconsin, the stoppable force versus the movable object when Wisconsin has the football in that game.
Yeah.
But on the other side, Wisconsin's, the one thing they're going to have is a great run defense. Like that, they will have that, and then it'll be interesting to see. I'm feeling 5 here. I think Rutgers goes 5-7, but I could see them getting to 6.
I'm trying to vamp here because I'm really not all that interested in diving deep into our next game here.
This is a pivotal. This is a pivotal game. This pivotal game on our schedule. Everything really hinges on this one.
Right. I mean, so Halloween, Northwestern travels west to Eugene to take on the Oregon Ducks. This is a very good team last year, obviously.
Correct.
Deep into the playoffs. They, were right there. Was it Final Four? They lost to Indiana in the Final Four?
Yep.
Okay.
Semi.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a very good Duck team. I know, John, defensively, they don't have Dylan Thieneman because he's going to be roaming the secondary for the Bears. But I'm guessing that they've got plenty of guys left to play some defense and maybe some guys to replace him.
Accurate. Correct. it's weird the way all these previews have stacked up for us based on our schedule and based just on the way that we've prepped this, because we've covered a couple of awesome 2025 defenses, like very, very good defenses, including Michigan, including Washington, and even including Penn State, which is defense we beat on the road. But we've come all this way, and up till this point, we've only dipped our toes into the 4-team 2025 Big Ten defensive god tier one time up to this point, and that was with Indiana. Here's number 2, the Oregon Ducks. We knew Oregon was going to have an awesome defense going into last year. We knew they had one of the best defensive ends in the country in Mateo Uiagalelei, who we knew they had really good linebackers, and then we knew that they had struck defensive gold in the transfer portal to a degree that no team had ever done in 1 year prior to 2025. And then when the season started, things went exactly as everyone expected them to. This was the number 3 total defense in the conference. It was a defense with absolutely no weaknesses. Oregon led the conference in tackles, they led it in assisted tackles, they led it in passes defended. That defensive back portal god haul that we outlined in last summer's preview, led by the aforementioned Purdue transfer, current Chicago Bear Dylan Thieneman, that portal haul worked out so flipping well that Oregon batted down 19 more passes than any other Big Ten team. Just an insane gap. But honestly, pick a stat, any stat, and the Ducks were top 5 in it if it was on the defensive side of the football. So, how do we juxtapose that year's team, last year's team with this year's team? The simplest way to explain it is that Oregon got less out of the portal this year because they needed less out of the portal this year. In a lot of ways, Oregon is standing pat because that's exactly where they want to be. For example, star defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoy, who we've said for years was comically overqualified to still be Oregon's DC, is finally gone. He's the head coach at Cal now. But Oregon was only too happy to stay in-house and promote co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach Chris Hampton to that job. What you need to know about Hampton is that he's phenomenal at developing defensive backs. This guy had a hand in some truly elite secondaries at Duke, and then he brought all of that skill to Oregon, where last year he basically painted his Sistine Chapel with Dylan Thieneman and fellow safety Aaron Flowers. Is this team losing a lot heading into 2026? In a way, kind of, yes. In addition to Tosh Lupoy and Dylan Thieneman, Oregon is basically turning over its entire linebacker core too. But, as with Hampton, Oregon was more than happy to stay in-house here. They trust the linebackers they have in the pipeline, even though they know they're all very green. But here's the thing. It's easy to trust new linebackers when you might have the best defensive line in the country. Earlier this summer, we talked about the Michigan D-line, which also might be the best defensive line in the country, and about all the pieces that are there right now, and how they have loads of talent in all the right places across the whole line. Well, Oregon is that, except none of those key pieces came in through the portal this year. They're basically just running back last year's entire sick defensive line. And yes, that starts with Uiagalelei, who is going to be just chalked in on everyone's first-team All-American lists going into this season. But don't forget Bear Alexander, who was last year's massive defensive tackle portal addition from USC, a former mega recruit who had been chasing his full potential and who, let's be honest, just needed to wash that USC stink off of him and get up to the Oregon Ducks. He was phenomenal last year. He's going to be a terror inside this year. Is he the best Oregon defensive tackle? Maybe not. Because the Ducks also have this 330-pound chonk monster, Amari Washington, just swallowing offensive linemen whole on the inside. And then, if you just want to complete, like, if we're just checking off types of guys, they also have a ridiculously good pure rush edge at Tatum Tuioti, who slid from linebacker to defensive end, from linebacker to pure edge, and basically made that tradition about as well as Abdul Carter made it for Penn State a few years back. Lord have mercy, what an effing monster of a defensive line. They'll be great at everything on every down. They have everything that they need.
I can't believe Barry Alexander is still on this team.
He is. And it's funny because he's been a name for so long because he transferred twice.
Yeah.
This is his third team, and the book on him was kind of like, everyone knows this guy's good, but he doesn't seem to be able to like find the momentum. And then he just had to get to a place where like it's defensive culture bedrock, and then he just like exploded. I mean, literally, it's
what?
like
USC wasn't that?
Sorry. Nope. It's ridiculous too, because I just named 4 guys and they're all different and they're all ludicrously good. Yeah. It's just anything you want, they have.
What an embarrassment of riches.
It is. It's ridiculous. And then in the secondary, it's stupid that Oregon could lose Dylan Thieneman and be this friggin' good back there. So in addition to the excellent Aaron Flowers at safety, they have an awesome number 1 cornerback in Brandon Finney Jr., who is a phenomenal athlete, who did absolutely everything well for them last year, including 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 7 passes defended, 42 tackles, and a defensive touchdown. Who will the number 2 corner be? They have a couple of good options. Honestly, it won't matter. Because somehow, for the second effing year in a row, Oregon might have pulled the best defensive back transfer in the country at safety. He's still from the Big Ten. He was still the star of an otherwise mediocre to bad defense. He's still an absolutely ludicrous athlete of the vanilla persuasion. And this time, his name is Coy Parrish from Minnesota. Heading into last season, both we and Minnesota talked a lot about how this guy was such a ludicrous athlete that Minnesota was going to try to put the ball in his hands any way they could. And then the season started and the Ghosts just didn't seem to have the overall talent and scheme to leverage him. Oregon absolutely does. You may see Parrish returning kicks and punts. You may see him line up at wide receiver. I'll leave all that to Scuzz. But where you are definitely going to see Parrish is absolutely feasting in the secondary in a way he never could at Minnesota, because neither the coaching nor the supporting cast were at this level. Now he's playing, yeah.
Oh, and finish your thought, and then I'll address it.
Now he's playing in a stacked secondary with the support of maybe the best defensive line in the nation for a defensive coordinator who is basically the NCAA safety whisperer right now.
I'll cover it now. They're so deep at wideout. I don't think there's any reason that you would put Coy Parrish on the field on offense. But kick returner, I think he's a perfect player to slot in there. They Noah Whittington was their guy last year. He's gone. So you got to think that Parrish is somebody who's getting some run there. But here's the thing, like they've got 6-foot speed demons at receiver for miles and miles. Like they don't need to use Parrish in those modes. They can save him for safety.
Right. He's and I mean it's just the guy's an absolute predator and he couldn't be more protected back there. Like I mean it's ridiculous. So yeah, their defense is unreal. And honestly, to allude to what we talked about off the top, who cares? Like were you circling Halloween in Eugene with red marker? Was that central to your Northwestern 26 football plans? Let's just get through this game. There's tons of meat on the bone for us beyond this point defensively.
So, Scuzz, offensively, I mean, I'm sure you have a lot to go through, and I'm excited to hear what they have. I'm looking at their QB roster, and obviously Dante Moore is there. Dylan Raiola, but the name that
number 4. We've talked about him before.
You sure you got it? Sure you brought enough guys?
Well, no, I'm talking about this, how to feel old. Akili Smith Jr.
Akili Smith Jr.
Oh my gosh!
All right, Scuzz, tell us about the Duck offense.
Wait, before you teed me up, my sophomore year at Northwestern, I watched the Tennessee Titans in person. In Nashville, I watched them play a game against Akili Smith Sr.'s Cincinnati Bengals when I was in college. So there you go, full circle.
Akili Smith, a lot better at Oregon than he was at Cincinnati. This will make you feel really old. I brought up Akili Smith Jr. last year in this moment.
Yeah,
of the
I
Oregon
forgot about
preview. Exactly.
Because I'm old.
Yeah.
Anyway,
this is the best offense on paper in the conference. A lot of folks rate Ohio State better, but I like Oregon. They were more productive and more explosive last year when it counted, in my opinion. And that's despite some key injuries. And while they have fewer returning starters this season, they're also younger on the offensive line. I just think they have better depth across the board, and I think they have the better quarterback. So let's start with O-line. Much like John says every year, with Larry Johnson and the Ohio State defensive line getting the benefit of the doubt in our previews because they simply reload every year without fail, the Ducks O-line, coached by Alik Terry, is the equivalent. They just reload and mid-top draft picks and reload again. They're only returning 2 starters, both on the interior. So the tackles are new, but they are supremely talented. They're deep. They have the pedigree and track record here to reload effectively. They're going to be one of the best offensive lines in the country. They have a mobile, accurate quarterback and insane speed across the wide receiver core that takes a ton of pressure off of those offensive linemen in terms of holding their blocks, etc. So all the pieces are here. That being said, they got dominated by Indiana's defensive line twice last season. So they got to figure out how to counterpunch against the Hoosiers in particular, but they are set up with all the pieces to do so. Now, Ohio State might have the best singular receiver in the country, and when it's all said and done, they might have the second best as well. But I believe this is the best group of receivers when healthy, which is a pretty obvious caveat. Evan Stewart missed a lot of last year, and DeCorian Moore, last year's top recruit, took some time getting going. Now the former is healthy, and the latter is poised to break out. There's a bunch of homegrown depth to go with them. There's experience and pedigree to round out the group. They're replacing top producer Malik Benson, but Evan Stewart was supposed to be the number 1 guy in this offense last year before his injury. And then DeCorian Moore is just a specimen. At tight end, they brought in some transfers, experienced and highly rated players from both Louisville and Clemson. This group goes 7 to 8 deep across the board, wide receiver to tight end, and they have so much talent and speed. They don't have a ton of size. They're really leading on the tight ends for any particular size, but I mean, we watched this team. It is so hard to keep these guys in front of you and keep them under wraps. And I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about kick returners. Their top running back from last year, Noah Whittington, is gone. But they went 3 deep at this position last year. And the other 2 guys, Jordan Davison and De'Aaron Hill, they're both back, along with a bunch of talented youth, especially true freshman Tredarian Ball. This guy's going to see the field in some way, shape, or form. He is elite speed, like one of these, Olympic track speed type guys. He's got great pass catching ability. I think he's likely the next great Oregon running back. Whether or not he takes that mantle this season or not is, TBD, but he's someone that will definitely be leveraged on the field, either in the kicking game or on jet sweeps, etc. They'll have packages for him, etc. All of that being said, this is just a squad full of home run hitters. And we've not even talked about Heisman hopeful Dante Moore yet. Moore completed 72% of his passes for 3,500 yards and 30 TDs last year. I had wondered in the preview how good he would look after just being very okay as a freshman at UCLA, knowing he'd had 2 years in the Oregon system to get up to speed. But we just, until we saw it, we wouldn't know. And he was spectacular. He was also really good at, he was pretty good at avoiding sacks. That was his big issue at UCLA. And the speed at which he makes reads and gets the ball out and operates this offense is just excellent. His backup is Dylan Raiola, who also completed 70% of his passes behind a far worse offensive line and with far worse skill players around him at Nebraska.
I can't believe this team's so flippin' good that they're covered for the nuclear scenario for
Yes.
any top team.
Yes.
They have a solution.
They have the guy if the QB goes down. And that you can't say that for any other team in this conference.
No.
Actually, maybe for us. We'll see. Different orders of magnitude. Regardless, at this point, Dante Moore is fully baked. I expect him to look pretty similar to how he did in 2026. I mentioned it before with the offensive line. He got absolutely lit up by Indiana. 6 sacks in the regular season game and another 3 in the playoff. Wisconsin, interestingly, similarly got to him a bunch. And that lost them the IU games and gave them a big scare in Badgertown. And luckily for Moore, he didn't get hurt in any of those situations. But this is the only thing holding him and Oregon back, in my opinion. And you just heard what John talked about. This team is preposterous top to bottom. if they can do like Indiana did last year and learn from what went wrong in 2024 or 2025, figure out how to neutralize that defensive line pressure in the toughest spots, the sky's the limit. And they are, an odds-on favorite for the national championship. This is where the but comes in, because similar to the defensive situation, they've lost their offensive coordinator as well. Will Stein was an outstanding OC for this offense. So outstanding that he's now the head coach of Kentucky. And they're going to bring in Drew Maringer, who has been here alongside Stein as a position coach and co-OC for the last 4 years. That should greatly reduce the risk of continuity for this program, et cetera. But clearly, Stein had a big role in developing Moore into the player he became last year. And whether or not Maringer has the same chemistry as Moore, if he can be as effective playing calls in the moment and adjusting during the game, et cetera. These are existential questions hanging over this offense this season. We have seen firsthand what happens when you hire a huge upgrade at coordinator or you hire a dud at coordinator. And, unlike on the defense where, the coordinator is new, but Lanning has always been a defensive guy, the offensive coordinator has to carry a big load for this program. So that is a real threat to their offensive effectiveness in 2026.
So let's go through the schedule here. They open up the season at home against Boise State. I'm expecting not to see any fisticuffs, unlike LeGarrette Blount's situation way back when.
Oh boy.
I don't know. I feel like those teams are always ready to scrap.
So then they're traveling to Stillwater, playing at Oklahoma State, home for
Revenge game.
Home for Portland State. They're at USC, home for UCLA and Nebraska. They're at Illinois. Halloween, Northwestern comes in. I can only hope that there's a look-ahead spot going on here, because the following week they pack their bags and head to Columbus to take on Ohio State. That's the November 7th week. It's going to be insane for so many reasons. Then they're home for Michigan. They're at Michigan State, and then play Washington at the end of the season.
This is the best team in the conference. And I think I'm not as nose to the grindstone. The rest of the college football landscape could not be screaming louder that this is the best team in the country. Our conference has won the last 3 national titles, and this is heads and tails the most complete team in the conference.
The coaches poll, the sports information directors poll, has Ohio State number 1 and Oregon number 2.
Yeah,
so,
but that's a pretty OSU and Oregon are the 1A 1B kind of across the board.
and 100%. And I would have Ohio State favored in that game. I think Oregon's going 11-1, and I think that's the game that they lose. I think that game's going to be really close. I think Oregon's going to have a better football team than Ohio State. That's not a knock on Ohio State or their defense, which we'll get to next week, which is probably going to be very good. I just think Oregon's better. But the coordinator piece is fascinating, because that a team is turning over both their offensive and defensive coordinators, both for head coaching jobs, in a season where they are 100% chasing the national title, without knowing the specifics. And our man Gary Seegers from Winning Cures Everything, I'm sure, could fill in the blanks for us in 2 seconds. This feels like something Alabama probably did at some point during their run. But it is a weird situation. But they stayed in house for both of them, which provides that stability.
Well, and on top of that, both sides of the ball are loaded with guys that are coming back, that have played with those new OCs as position coaches.
Right. It's ludicrous in 2026 that a team is returning this much talent that it didn't send to the NFL and it didn't pull in through the transfer portal. They just have so many good guys from last year's team, and then they added key pieces too. And the schedule's not, it's not that difficult. Like, they get a bunch of big games. That trip to USC early is obviously a big one if USC's offense can get going. But you take that Ohio State game out, they get Michigan at home, they get Washington at home. It's like just all the other key games they get at Outson.
Well, and importantly, they miss Indiana, who
Right.
Yeah.
really had their number last year.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, they had the back and forth with Ohio State. They beat them in the regular season and then lost to them in the playoff. And maybe the reverse happens this season, but I agree. Like 11-1, 12-0, it all hinges on November 7th. Not that they couldn't drop another game somewhere else, but this team is white hot. And
the hilarious thing, and this will probably be very much borne out in 2027, is Dylan Raiola's only requirement of you is that you protect him. And this offensive line for any team not named Indiana. So, like, in the event Dylan Raiola has to come in, he's probably going to cook a full meal.
Well, he's such a similar quarterback to Dante Moore.
Yeah.
That they don't have to change anything. I mean, it is plug and play.
That's absolutely huge.
Right.
That's awesome.
They're just so set, and they're deep everywhere, and like there's just an awesome football team. Like, I don't know, like to me it's like Ohio State will probably be phenomenal, and those very well may be the two best teams in the nation, and maybe they play 3 times. But this Oregon team, for my money, is there ain't a better team in the country. They're perfect. They're good everywhere.
But hey, let's not underestimate the Chip Kelly factor.
Yeah, But with all that said, spooky things happen on Halloween. That's what I'm saying,
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients, no fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group, compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation, and go Cats. So, moving on to the final team we're playing, or the final team on our schedule tonight. Cats return home on November 7th to take on Iowa. I mean, do we just need to replay our Iowa preview from last year and the year before and the year before and the year before and the year before?
I mean, we joke, but basically, yeah, like that's how this is going to go. We've been joking about this coming into the pod. Like that's exactly how this is going to play out. Yeah, very much so.
So, I mean, if that's the case, then I'm expecting that they're going to have a pretty good defense.
Well, so my Iowa defensive preview this year is going to be pretty hilarious. Because here's my thesis. Iowa's defense is going to be awesome in 2026. Here's the evidence against that thesis. Iowa loses like 10 guys off this defense. They lose almost all of the guys, okay? Here's the evidence for my thesis. It's Iowa. It's funny, Cuz joked earlier about Larry Johnson Sr. and the Ohio State defensive line and that wash, rinse, repeat nature of it. Well, in any universe in which Kurt Signetti and Brian Haynes don't exist, Iowa, with Kirk Ferentz at head coach and Phil Parker at DC, they're kind of like the real runaway winner for this team gets 100% of the defensive benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. There are a couple of other teams that compete on this list like Michigan, but you can easily argue that no one just continues to throw up excellence in the face of just whatever happens year to year than Iowa does on the defensive side of the ball. So from 2021 to 2023, Iowa basically put up 3 god-tier defenses. And then in 2024, they, quote, slipped slightly based on an absolutely ludicrous amount of turnover. But that slip only dropped them to the number 5 scoring defense in the Big Ten. And then heading into last year, we said that they were once again going to have to replace a bunch of guys, especially at linebacker, but that based on the strength of the defensive line, they could either be very good or they could be something much more. Guess which of those things happened? This defense didn't lord over the entire Big Ten last year only because Ohio State and Indiana exist. Iowa fielded the number 8 scoring defense in the nation. Iowa's defense was legitimately better than the Oregon defense you just heard me talk about. And Oregon's defense was awesome at everything. And as with that ridiculous 2021 to 2023 stretch, Iowa's D-line drove it all. Aaron Graves, Ethan Herkett, Max Llewellyn, just a bunch of classic Iowa bangers who individually were each basically good at everything. It's funny, like we talked about this situation at Oregon where it's like, pick a type of guy, any type of guy you want on the defensive line. And then you have Iowa where it's like, every guy's basically the same type of guy. You can envision exactly the kind of guy I'm talking about, right? He's like 280 to 300 pounds, and he's tall, and he's strong, and he can do basically everything. And Iowa just churns those guys out. And now, all three of those guys I just mentioned are gone. And so is Xavier Kwampa, who is this battering ram safety that we've been talking about for years, who had been anchoring this run defense for several years. It's truly not a stretch to say no serious college football fan who's not an Iowa fan can name any guy, one guy, who's going to start for this Iowa defense this year. So, wow, crazy. Sounds like a big problem. Did Iowa run out to the transfer portal to address these needs in the front seven? Nope. Basically, every front seven player Iowa is going to start this coming year was a reserve for last year's defense. Now, I will say, Iowa did go into the portal to get guys in the secondary this year, particularly safeties. Safety, ironically, is the one position that's arguably Iowa's only returning name player, and that would be Zach Lutmer, who probably wins the Big Ten award for most Robert Fitzgerald-like guy not named Robert Fitzgerald, which, all you Northwestern fans, you might suspect, that's a massive compliment. This guy's really, really good. Iowa also does return a middle linebacker, Jaden Montgomery, who started the second half of the season last year and was awesome. So that is two great starting pieces to have on this defense. But I'm going to zag a little here and underscore what the outlook is for this 2026 Iowa defense by highlighting three guys who basically haven't played at all yet for Iowa. Two are transfers, and the other's a rising sophomore. The first transfer is safety Cody Haddad. Cody Haddad basically hasn't played college football yet. He's a former 3-star recruit, and this is his second college team, which would be worrisome in like 95% of cases. Except in Cody Haddad's case, the two schools he's played for thus far are Ohio State and Iowa. And keep in mind, Iowa almost never gets transfers into this defense. So if they go out and they grab a safety from Ohio State, how do you think this is going to go? And then you can wash, rinse, repeat that notion for another transfer safety, Tyler Brown. Tyler Brown was all Sun Belt for James Madison last year. Tyler Brown would be starting for UCLA's defense this year, along with all the other good James Madison guys, except Iowa identified that he's probably better than all of those guys, so Iowa grabbed him. Again, you don't know anything about this guy in the Big Ten, but how do you think this is going to go? It's Iowa. And that brings me to the defensive line, which is replacing every single starter. So, first of all, you know, of that whole murderer's row of defensive linemen that they had, you know how many were drafted? One, Max Llewellyn, and he went in the 7th round. The other guys were all UDFAs. I can't possibly scream this loudly enough for the millionth time. Culture effing matters. And I could go through right now, and I could list every single guy who was a reserve in this front four last year, who's going to start now and is going to be awesome. But I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to list one. It's a guy who basically hasn't played yet. He was a massive defensive end recruit, and he picked Iowa over Miami, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, basically everyone. And his name is Iose Epineza. Yes, he's AJ Epineza's younger brother.
Oh, jeez.
How do you think this is going to go? Okay? So it literally is the ultimate stress test of culture. They're turning over everybody, and with the exception of a couple guys in the secondary, they're like, we're just going with our guys. We know what we've got. And you kind of have to be like, I guess you do, because it's Iowa. And this is what you do every single year. And we all know where this is going to end up. And this is going to be, at worst, a top 5 defense in the conference. So for us, Northwestern, I'm sure Scuzz is just going to drum this home in a second, but in what will be the second monster football game in the new Ryan Field, right? The 4th overall, but the second biggie after Penn State. The goal for us is just gross and close in this one. This is a defense that's going to be awesome, disciplined, loaded with talent, even if it hasn't played much. We're getting them late in the year. The wrinkles are going to have been ironed out by then. And it's a November football game in Evanston between Northwestern and Iowa. Like, have you all watched football? You know how this is going to go, okay? I think it's going to be on RD to keep this one low scoring, find a takeaway that could make all the difference. But Scuzz can handle the rest of that and tell you what the likelihood of that is.
So, again, if we're just running back our Iowa previews from years past, I'm just expecting offensive line. Maybe they're bigger, maybe they're smaller. We'll see. But running game and then a mid quarterback.
The Iowa Hawkeyes, grosser and closer than ever before. There's some nuance here that actually is a little interesting, I think, that maybe makes this year look a little different than the last couple, which even by Iowa standards were quite horrific. The Cade McNamara experience in Iowa City was
will not be remembered fondly.
A real train wreck. I mean, just it was bad. So let me rewind. I said last year Iowa's offense would be fascinating to watch because of what it could show us regarding Northwestern's failed hire of Zach Lujan from South Dakota State. We had assumed at the time that hire meant bringing FCS championship quarterback Mark Gronowski along with him to Evanston. That didn't happen, and maybe it was a good thing. Gronowski struggled mightily last season. He was clearly a really good FCS QB, but one who did not possess the passing skills for the Big Ten. And despite that, Iowa's offense was, by Iowa standards, pretty decent last year. 29 points per game is their best output since COVID. And they were very efficient while still having near zero explosivity. Now, as we come into this season, they have only 5 returning starters. The most important of which is running back Kamari Moulton, who was the engine last year. He had 900 yards rushing. He averaged 5 per carry. Importantly, he was super consistent. Oregon was the only opponent that held him below 4 yards per carry. But Moulton is not a home run hitter. He has 1 long touchdown in his career back in 2024. The other backs from last year, who all also had similar 5-yard per carry averages, are all gone. And Moulton's presumed backups this year are both 225-pound monsters, including the FCS leader from South Dakota. But I'm not seeing a lot of speed to the edge or home run threat from this group. And that is really important. Because, guys, I'm really excited to tell you that we are back in weirdly underweight Iowa offensive line territory.
Amazing. It's like a warm blanket, Scuzz.
I thought the departure of Brian Ferentz had kind of ended this, but we're back. No interior lineman in the 2 deep is over 300 pounds.
Wow.
That's unreal.
The starting tackles are both like 310, and the backup tackles are lightweights too. Now,
I mean, is Mike Shanahan running the zone read here? And
here's the thing. I'm not saying it's impossible to be good in this setup. But when you're Iowa and your entire thing is running the ball and defense, it's really, really strange. And more importantly, this was the death knell for Iowa offenses of the past. They tried to get lighter to boost pass blocking back in the early 2020s, and it backfired big time. Even the best center in the country, Tyler Linderbaum, couldn't fix that. And without the beef in the interior in 2026, I think these running backs who don't look particularly fast on paper to me are going to face a lot of resistance. Iowa's rush offense the last 2 years was really good. 177 yards per game and then 197 last season. Now, both those numbers are greatly buoyed by the fact that Gronowski was a great runner He ran for over 500 yards. Brendan Sullivan, the year prior, was a really strong runner. I don't have his stats in front of me. But on paper, this recipe of not a lot of speed at running back and this batshit offensive line, and let me just say it now, not a lot of exciting options at quarterback. This is a recipe to backslide into the sub 150 yards per game passing basement that marked Brian Ferentz's tenure. Last year, I mean, we all joked a lot that Gronowski couldn't throw the ball because he looked really awful to start the year. He was inaccurate, bad reads, late throws, or some of those highlights of him like trying to hit a receiver and it bouncing in the turf 5 feet in front of that receiver, like well into the season. I mean, he was decent enough eventually to miraculously outpace the McNamara-Sullivan combo by about 140 yards total, but they had next to nothing in the fireworks department. Even Jacob Gill, who put up a Herculean 400 yards in 2024, had only 278 last season. Their tight end, DJ Vonamy, was the leading pass catcher, 430 yards on 30 catches. He's back, but there's not an impact receiver in sight here. Reese Vanderzee has at least some size at 6'4", but he's missed 5 games each of the last 2 seasons and has only put up 200 yards in each of those seasons. They brought in a couple of FCS transfers who had, 800, 900 yards in FCS, but they have nothing to challenge defenses in their receiver core unless they can run off of play action. And they have an underweight offensive line and a set of running backs that, while physical and strong runners, don't seem to have the speed to threaten the edge. I don't know how this is going to work. And this is where it gets really fascinating. So quarterback, they have a conundrum. Much like Jim Harbaugh a few years ago, I think Kirk Ferentz has a very important choice to make this year. He could go with door number A, Hank Brown, the most Iowa of quarterbacks.
I mean, it's the most Iowa quarterback names. I mean, seriously.
The name, 6'4", 215 pounds, strong arm, statuesque, an unheralded 3-star quarterback who went to Auburn and then transferred to Iowa last year. He threw for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns at Auburn. That was against New Mexico and Alabama A&M. He then promptly threw 3 picks against Arkansas and never saw the field again. Behind door number B, or door B, I don't know why I said door number B. Door B, the alternative is Jeremy Hecklinski, a high 3-star QB coming out of high school at Wake Forest, Max Prep's Player of the Year semifinalist in 2023, described as a gunslinger with some moxie, but he's listed at 5'11" and 188 pounds, which means he's really 5'10", 180 at best. He's a scrambler and an improviser. He throws sideways, makes it up as he goes along. Big-time Diego Pavia and Dylan Raiola energy. The obvious play here, given the lack of any pop at running back, offensive line, or receiver, is to go with Hecklinski and hope that he can create enough chaos and confusion and extend plays long enough to unlock some offensive production. But we know Kirk Ferentz. This is like the Spencer Petras, Alex Padilla conundrum all over again. Playing a shorter dude over a 6'4" prototype? There's no chance in hell.
Right.
So now we have the classic Iowa formula for an all breaks, no gas football team.
Yeah.
In years past, this formula has relied on incredible special teams play. But Fitz hired the special teams coordinator away to Michigan State. So I'm sure that they're going to have some good stuff on that side of the ball. I'm sure the defense is going to be good, to your point, John. And amazingly, I think this offense could, points are certainly going to drop back because they had a pretty amazing efficiency last year, given they had no explosivity. But they could drop down to the 20 points per game range, and that you can call 20 points per game the Ferentz line because he rarely cleared it. And if they go below that, holy shit.
Ryan Fitzgerald is still on this team. Speaking of Fitz.
Yes, Ryan Fitzgerald is at least per per Phil Steele, the fourth string QB behind Jimmy Sullivan, and then Hecklinski and Hank Brown. Redshirt freshman.
I'm
I don't know.
I'm gonna go out an extreme ledge and say that Ryan Fitzgerald does not finish his career with the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm going to go out on a crazy limb and say that he's going to move east at some point, but we shall see.
Yep,
All right.
I would believe that.
So let's run through Iowa's schedule here real quick. It's a very Iowa schedule too. Northern Illinois, Iowa State, Northern Iowa is their non-con. Boom, 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 all at home. They're at Michigan. They're home for Ohio State. They're at Washington and Minnesota. They're home for Wisconsin. They're at Northwestern on the 7th of November. Home for Purdue, at Illinois, and then home for Nebraska to the Black Friday game.
It's just so dumb. Previewing Iowa is so dumb. If you take this team and you put them in other uniforms in another city, I would say this team's going to suck. They're just, that offense sounds god awful. And they're turning over the whole defense. And like they're going to win 8 or 9 games. It's just so stupid. I hate that we end up here every year. They're like, the defense is just going to find a way through. I mean, they're going to roll out of bed for 9 if they win any of Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, which they probably won't. But I'm just, their first 3 are a cakewalk. That Iowa State team is probably going to be historically bad.
not even a show.
Right.
Northern Illinois looks very bad too.
Right. They turned over their head coach also. Then they get an FCS team. I mean, like, right, their offense might be so friggin' bad. But I'm like, are we all going to make ourselves look like idiots and like go against the metronome of college football? Like, shitty offense, awesome defense, 8 wins. Like, it's, and like you look at the last like 6, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska, like, why can't Iowa eat all the way through there? Like I
mean, that's the Big Ten West right there.
Right. I mean, that's like, with all due respect, even including Northwestern, like if you're buying tickets to any of those games, Iowa, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Iowa, Northwestern, Iowa, Purdue, Iowa, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska. Hoo-wee. Yep.
So
this feels, I think this team is probably going to resemble the 2024 team more than the 2025 team. And I'm cribbing here off a couple different factors. But when I look at like maybe a little bit of a step back on defense, but still really, really good, a little bit of a step back on offense. It could have a lot more of a step back on offense. It could end up more like 2021, where they went, now granted they went 10-4 that year with, I mean, they were averaging 23 points per game on offense. How's that even possible? But interestingly, in 24, they had 5 losses that season, one of which was, I think, in a bowl game. But at UCLA, at Michigan State were both losses. These away games at Washington, at Minnesota, at Northwestern, and Illinois, not a single one of those is a gimme.
Right. Oh yeah.
Their gimmies are, Purdue at home, Wisconsin at home, the non-con. I certainly rate this team well ahead of Nebraska to close out the season. Man, winning all 4 of those games on the road would be a pretty tall order, and may we be the one that takes them down.
For sure. It's just so like, I feel like I'm ducking a lightning bolt saying this. They could be significantly worse on defense. They lose all of their guys. The team's not loaded with big recruits behind any of those guys. It's just like, and like what? Like, and then I'm just like, we're all going to be looking like idiots when they just crank out another good defense again.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
It's just there. But I mean, that's the thing is like, you look at this and you're like, they're going 3-0 to start, but then it's like, could they split? I mean, they're going 3-0 and they're very likely losing the next 3. None of those games break well for them at all. But then like, what if they
that Washington game is going to be very telling. That feels like a pivot.
Yeah.
If they go out there and they thump Washington, like look out.
Right.
But if they get thumped, then there's a lot of like question marks that suddenly pop up on the back half of that schedule.
So one question mark I have, and this is kind of bringing it back home. This is going to be the real like this game at Northwestern is going to be the real bellwether on how reducing the capacity of Ryan Field is going to be. I mean, you look at the home games we have before that, the Penn State game. Yeah, I mean, like that's the first game. It's Penn State doesn't travel too well. They never have. That's going to be mostly purple. Ball State, yeah, it's homecoming. It's also, it's Ball State. No, like they're not bringing any fans. Rutgers isn't going to be bringing too many fans. Iowa is one of those teams that always
Iowa will buy Iowa will buy every ticket you make available for that game.
Yeah. So it'll
100%.
It'll be real interesting to see if, because most years the Iowa, it's what 60-40 Hawkeye fans at the old stadium, probably. Maybe. I mean, it'll be real interesting to see the breakdown this week, against Iowa. So,
and you're right. It's the rubber meets the road and we're saying this out. We know we're preaching to the choir. We're saying this to Northwestern fan base. For all of you, it's the rubber meets the road moment where it's like, this is a huge game in an awesome stadium where the other team's going to buy as many tickets as they can. And it's like, this is the first one where it's like, we all know we're going to rep like crazy for Penn State. Week after's homecoming. Rutgers, I bet we don't sell out, but I really hope we do. And then this one where it's like, it will be a sellout, but the how much we can tilt that in our favor will be huge in this one. Because I mean, I think again, it's sort of like a little bit, but I mean, it's where Scuzz mapped it out. It's interesting to juxtapose their offensive line with Rutgers' offensive line and be like, Iowa's offensive line's going in the wrong direction again. And that could be a big chip for us in this game, where if our defensive line can hold against them when they're trying to run the ball, I think everything else will hold up for us. And our offensive line, can grind against them, and we grind out a low-scoring game. It's going to be a low-scoring game, and it's going to be cold, and at least we'll be more protected from the elements in our beautiful new seats at our beautiful new stadium. But I mean, that's a classic game. I do think we can win it. It's going to be a huge game for us, and I don't know. Maybe it'll be if we get that win, then like all of a sudden Iowa could be shading closer to 6 games. I'm just like, there's not many surer bets than Iowa wins 8 or 9 with a team that looks exactly like this.
I'm on the 7-8 train for Iowa this year. I think they don't feel like the kind of team that's going to jump up and be dominant.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
I do think that special teams piece is going to have an impact to them. I mean, that's been a cornerstone of their success. I think about I forget the guy that the punt returner. He literally won them like 6 games.
Boy, are we blanking on his name? He returned a pick 6 in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Cooper Jean.
There it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that is, those are the 3 teams we have. Next week, we're going to come back and finish off the Northwestern schedule with looks at Ohio State, Minnesota, and Illinois, kind of to wrap things up before we get into the Northwestern preview of it all. And then we're right into game week. I mean, like I said at the top, we're like 3-4 weeks away from kicking off the season. It's time, boys. It's
very close. It's very close.
It is, and finally, like kind of getting through and going through. Shouts to our man NUFBR, Northwestern Football Recruiting, who did his best to compile, as much as he thinks. And again, I think we're all a little bit speculating, but he did his best to really put together a really solid looking depth chart and tweeted it out this week. And that was just useful, to get eyes on and look. And, it's whether it's completely accurate or not, it was a real opportunity, I think, to look at our depth and to see everyone lined up there And it makes it a little bit more real. It pushes you that much closer to the start of the season to be like, yeah, here it is. Here's like the group of guys, here's who's new, here's who's coming in, and really seeing how it all shakes out. And it gets you excited. It gets you excited for all the pieces we have and gets you that much closer to the start of the season.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this baby up?
Yeah, pretty big bit of Northwestern fall sports news to tack on the back here, which is field hockey news. The FIH Field Hockey World Cup, so that's their World Cup, that's the biggie. The field hockey international landscape kind of goes every 2 years. It's Olympics, because it's a big-time Olympic sport, and then it's the FIH World Cup. And the USA is going to be there. It's split, it's dual hosting, split between Belgium and the Netherlands this year. And we are going to be there, and 3 Wildcats are going to be on that team. Maddie Zimmer and Ashley Sessa, who both represented Northwestern in the Olympics. And this obviously was near and dear to our hearts, friend of the pod, Lauren Wattis,
Hell yeah.
is number 3 on the U.S. team headed to the World Cup. Fantastic. It's really interesting. In addition to all being Wildcats, they're all from Pennsylvania, which we know from having Lauren on and just our general, just the growth of the sport and our growing understanding. Pennsylvania is like the absolute hotbed of this sport in this country, and Northwestern's a great representative of that. All 3 of those players being from the Pennsylvania area. The Philadelphia Inquirer has a great story up, and we link to it on our Twitter feed, and you should check it out. A great feature on Ashley Sessa that mentions the other cats as well. So really cool. And it's going to be, I will post it up to the degree that it's going to be viewable online. Obviously, the highlights are going to be up there. It's going to be really cool. I think traditionally, the U.S., the team has gotten a lot better. It is obviously a European juggernaut. The Netherlands are phenomenal at this sport, and they're going to be the hosts here, co-hosts. So we'll be kind of trying to throw our weight in that group, but I think you can expect that probably all of these players, based on the Olympics, like our girls are going to get some big time playing time here, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So we'll keep you posted on that, but August 15th to August 30th is the timetable on that.
Yeah, so that's just coming up at the end of this week. So definitely, keep your eyes peeled. It's gonna be awesome. So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Blue Sky, at Westlaw Pirates. And you can always email us, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the west side of Ryan Field playing the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scousby, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We will see you next time.